There's a vast expanse of open land here without nearby malls, and the closest movie theater is 40 miles away. It's hardly surprising that kids start drinking as early as 6th grade and have sex to fill time. That was never my way, though. I found a different way to pass the hours. About half an hour from my town lies a hidden cemetery at the end of a long, winding gravel road. The majority buried there are children under 10, mostly from the 1800s. Some headstones have crumbled into ruins, and even the newer ones show weather stains and moss. During the day, the place is peaceful, even beautiful. But at night, it becomes a playground for the children buried beneath. I know this firsthand. Last summer, my friends and I decided to visit the cemetery in the dead of night. I'd been there numerous times during the daytime, but never after sunset. We figured it would be creepy, wandering the maze of gravestones with flashlights, seeing who could make it back to the car first. After carefully navigating the bumpy dirt road, we reached the rusty gates. I parked, and we all climbed out. The first thing that struck me was the unsettling silence. Usually, the day is alive with birds, buzzing insects, and the wind rustling through leaves. Here, standing in near darkness, it felt like we were floating in the vacuum of space or maybe deep underground. I felt utterly alone and kept glancing upwards, desperate to find even a single star. I left the car running, headlights on, as we wandered aimlessly across the cemetery. We weren't searching for anything, just reading headstones and trying to enjoy the thrill of being there so late. None of us were drunk or impaired, except for the buzz from Monster energy drinks. I drifted to a far corner of the graveyard alone, looking for the oldest marked stone when my friend Nick called out, asking who was already back by the car. I turned to glance at the idling vehicle, but saw no one near it. We did a head count. We were all scattered near different graves, far from the headlights. Nick swore he'd seen a shadow near the passenger seat, but when no one admitted to it, we shrugged and resumed exploring. While clearing twigs and fallen branches from around the graves, I thought I heard a child's laughter beyond the fence among the trees. I didn't say anything aloud, but shone my flashlight into the woods, half expecting to glimpse a kid hiding behind a tree. I knew I wasn't imagining it. The forest around me was completely silent, and my friends were in the other direction. The idea of someone, child or not, lurking in the woods without any light unsettled me. I headed back toward the car. Nick was still near the stones. Liz sat by the fence, looking out into the woods. Joel had returned to the car, sitting in the passenger seat. As I moved toward Nick, we all suddenly heard faint music. Our flashlights snapped to a nearby grave we'd overlooked. There, on the ground, sat a small red box with a crank on the side, slowly turning by itself. "It's a jack-in-the-box," I said aloud. Nick pointed his flashlight at the gravestone as the music played. Why would someone leave a toy on a grave for a kid who died in 1904? I was about to answer when the crank suddenly spun wildly, the music blurring. Then the jack popped out of the box. We all jumped, shocked and unnerved. The crank had gone from barely moving to spinning like a helicopter blade. Exchanging glances, we started walking back to the car and piled inside. I looked at Joel, who seemed tense and rattled. What happened? What happened? Did someone just tap on the car? We all shook our heads. Joel explained that when he arrived and shut the door, he heard soft tapping against the outside of the car, starting at the trunk, then slowly moving toward the passenger side. We chalked it up to nerves. Half an hour later, we pulled into my garage and climbed out. I froze instantly. There were dozens of child-sized handprints smeared over the passenger side door. Nick and the others had seen them too, but we rarely speak of it. Since then, I've visited the cemetery during daylight, but never found the jack-in-the-box again. A few months ago, the girl I was dating suggested we make our third date a truly memorable one. Pack a bottle of wine, bring a laptop, and watch a scary movie at the most remote graveyard we could find. Both of us were hardcore horror enthusiasts, feeling a bit jaded and immune to fear. Putting ourselves into the perfect setting for terror sounded like the ultimate adventure. We chose a graveyard neither of us had ever visited based on public records and drove an hour out into the backcountry. When we finally reached the location, we had to park 3 miles away. Behind thick underbrush, there was nowhere else to turn off along the wooded country road. We walked down a dirt trail toward the unmarked cemetery, careful not to step into the undergrowth on either side. The trees eventually opened up into a small, dark clearing with century-old gravestones scattered with no particular order. We spread out a blanket to set up the laptop, poured some wine, turned off our flashlights, and started the movie. The atmosphere was intensely eerie, but I still felt relatively safe and excited until something unexpected happened. Less than 10 minutes into the film, a pickup truck drove by on the country road outside the cemetery. We could see its lights through the trees. It was the only vehicle we'd seen that night, so we shrugged it off. But then the truck returned, headlights glowing distinctively, and we were certain it was the same one. It slowly turned onto the gated graveyard entrance. I quickly closed the laptop, and we both froze as the truck's headlights fell on us. For a moment, it backed up, seemingly turning around before parking just outside the entrance. We couldn't tell if the driver had spotted us or what their intentions were. I suggested we pack our things, and my date agreed. We gathered what we had and were about to stand when the truck's lights went dark. We sat there in complete darkness for a few tense moments, confused and scared. We had no idea who was inside or why the driver hadn't left the path we had come down. It was far too close to risk calling attention by moving or making noise through the woods. After a few minutes, I started to suspect maybe the driver had fallen asleep, or perhaps there were two people inside, distracted and unaware of us. I took my date's hand and motioned her forward without speaking. There was no choice but to creep past the truck, one silent, careful step at a time. As we moved along the trail, I strained to hear any sound from the truck but caught nothing. Once out of its line of sight, we quickened our pace, but the lack of incident only heightened our fear. I tried convincing myself it was just a creepy coincidence and the area was safe. But in the dark, unaware if someone was silently stalking us, the thought of being hunted by the truck's occupant was impossible to shake. We were about half a mile from the car when a piercing woman's scream echoed through the woods behind us. And then came a gunshot. We paused, frozen until the sound faded, then ran as fast as possible to the car. We were on the road and could reach the vehicle within minutes. My cheek pressed into cold, damp mud. I heard her struggling to control her rapid breathing. I released her hand and gently stroked her hair to calm her. After about a minute, my prediction came true. We heard the truck growling closer, headlights cutting through the darkness as it passed by. Suddenly, it slammed on the brakes and backed up. It idled there on the road, still for what felt like 10 minutes. To my horror, I realized it must have spotted something on the roadside. Perhaps I dropped something. After the longest few minutes of my life, the truck slowly rolled forward and the driver stayed inside. When finally sure it was gone, I whispered to my date that we should wait a while longer. If the driver had seen our car hidden in the brush, he might wait nearby for our return, and this guy had a gun. We decided the risk was too great. We got up and headed deeper into the woods, finding a drier patch of dirt to lie low. That's when I noticed one flashlight was missing. We might have dropped it by the roadside, and the truck's headlights could have caught its reflection. We laid back under the brown blanket again. After sprinkling dry leaves over us, we felt hidden enough for the time being. We stayed like that for nearly an hour, starting to laugh quietly about how silly the whole situation had been. Suddenly, we heard a car approaching from the road. From the engine sound, it was the same truck, but the headlights were off now as it moved cautiously. We froze and held our breath. The truck passed slowly, like a hungry shark gliding through the water. We immediately felt relief that our caution had paid off. Prepared for the long haul, we decided not to move until dawn. We took turns dozing. By sunrise, we were sweaty, sore, and eager to stretch. I whispered I was going to peek out when, in the distance, a cell phone rang. The clear crisp tone sounded like a church bell, no more than 50 yards away. The phone went silent after 2 rings. We strained our ears, trying to catch any other sounds. After a few moments, I thought I heard footsteps moving away, but uncertain, I wouldn't risk moving. We lay still for several more hours. Eventually, we heard traffic passing regularly, probably past 8 a.m. After waiting for 3 cars to go by, I cautiously sat up. We packed our belongings. The sun shone warmly now, comforting instead of eerie. As we approached the car, I told my date to hide while I checked for anyone nearby. I got in, started the engine, then opened the passenger door. She ran over and climbed in, and we sped back to town, heading straight for the police station. We walked in covered in mud and dirt and recounted the night's events. They dispatched officers to the graveyard but found no body or traces of blood. I still don't know what was going on with the man in the truck or if the cell phone call was connected. All I do know is how grateful I am to be alive. Since that night, every horror movie we watch together is inside the safety of our homes. This story comes from a female perspective. The summer before I got married, I returned to my hometown to reconnect with friends from high school. I stayed with Rachel, my best friend, throughout grade school until just after graduation. We spent evenings in her basement, reminiscing about old times. One night, Rachel pulled out an old yearbook and flipped to a page where we both had written our bucket lists. Most items were vacation plans and sexual experiences we'd already checked off. But one stuck out, visiting the Green Lady Cemetery at night alone. As teenagers, we went through a supernatural phase, loving creepy houses, ghost photos, and EVP recordings. So, impulsively, we decided to drive to the Green Lady Cemetery that very night. Near 1 a.m. Green Lady Cemetery isn't its real name, but it's what we called it at school. There were stories of a woman in a green dress wandering the grounds after dark. We arrived stone-cold sober and parked by the gate. We climbed over the fence and walked among the gravestones, suddenly feeling silly since we hadn't brought any cameras or recording devices. It quickly became clear that the thrill of wandering a supposedly haunted cemetery at night held more weight at 18. Now, as adults, it just felt mildly amusing and nostalgic kind of trouble with Rachel again. We made small talk, shining flashlights around, not feeling afraid since we could still faintly hear distant traffic. We paused and sat on the grass, talking for a while. Then Rachel pointed into the darkness among the stones, a few yards away. "What's that?" she asked, excitement more than fear. I spotted a tiny orange pinprick of light and shrugged, a bit disappointed. "It's probably a cigarette." "Looks like we're not alone after all." Rachel waved jokingly toward the light. After a brief moment, a deep, raspy voice rang out, crystal clear. "Expletive, leave." "Who's going to tear your baby out?" My blood ran cold. We stared at our feet in shock and fear. Rachel screamed back toward the voice. "What the expletive? Did you just say?" "Don't expletive threaten us." "Come closer, and I'll kick your pansy ass." I grabbed Rachel's arm and pulled her back toward the car. She kept shouting profanities, but I didn't look back. The stranger never spoke another word. Rachel was furious all the way home that we'd been scared off. I calmed her down when we stopped for a drive-thru and later at her place where we watched a movie. She fell asleep on the couch, but I remained wide awake, cold sweat running down my neck until sunrise. Looking back, I realize I hid my true terror well mainly because I hadn't told Rachel I was pregnant, and it was too early to show. What that man said at the cemetery could have been coincidence, but it shook me deeply. Eventually, I fell asleep at 7 a.m. of the threat repeating nonstop in my mind. A few nights later, driving back home across state to my aunt's family, I stopped before the highway. I couldn't resist swinging by Green Lady Cemetery one more time. I parked, but didn't get out as night fell. I stared out across the graves and into the distance for several minutes. Only once darkness fully claimed the land did I notice a tiny orange glow among the stones. I turned on my car headlights, but no one was visible. Immediately, I reversed and drove away, never looking back. There's always a reason to be afraid.